Like a withering tree, your thoughts are to me. Truth stands before you, and you still can't see. Righteous, the covenant plan, strike down injustice with the strength of God's hand. Rising up prophet from a boy to a man, truth stands before you, and you still can't understand. Why question? Is my way of compassion, or the way that I answer, or the way I hang out with all the loners, the losers, and all of the temple dancers? It is the strength in my message, or the doubt that makes you question me, or the way I force you to reevaluate your reality. Flipping over tables and turning over chairs. Come asking question if you even dare. You got the regulations right, but hearts that don't care. Cursed be the branches and cursed be the roots. Your tree is useless to me if there exists no fruit. No ears to hear me and no eyes to see. Like a withering tree, your thoughts are to me. Like a withering tree, your thoughts are to me. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. His image stamped on you, and all you do is dodge. Try to justify injustice, and you're open to oppress. God, when shall my seeking people ever find their rest? You seem to want a response, but haven't listened to a word I've said. We serve a God of the living and not a God of the dead. Restore prayer for the nation in the temple is my plea. Like a withering tree, your thoughts are to me. Like a withering tree, your thoughts are to me. I've come looking to see if there's fruit that you've brought to bear. I see leaves, tender branches, but nothing else hanging there. This is the time for you to show and to prove. Your acts are called into question. It's time to see what you choose. Is it the healing of nations or standing ovations? Is it money in your pocket or your place in your station? The answer to this question is what I came to see. And like a withering tree are your thoughts to me. Cursed be the branches and cursed be the roots. Your tree is useless to me if there exists no fruit. No ears to hear me and no eyes to see. Like a withering tree are your thoughts to me. Truth stands before you and you still can't see.
Here we are at Celebration Station, a time when this place was probably packed on the weekends where families and friends would come and enjoy the day, and they would celebrate. Well, that day has long since gone. And it kind of reminds me of what Jesus went through as he's walking through Jerusalem. On Sunday, people are celebrating what took place. And on Monday, Jesus walks into the temple, a fitting place for a Messiah, and there his heart is grieved. He sees people changing the money and he's overwhelmed with emotion. Jesus begins to look at them and he reminds them that you've turned my house of prayer into a den of robbers. And right then and there, the people begin to question Jesus' authority and see the celebration begins to diminish. And later on, as the scribes and Pharisees are talking to Jesus and they're challenging him, he tells them a parable. And at the end of that parable, he reminds them a very simple truth. He says that the stone that the builders rejected will become the capstone. And he reminds the scribes and Pharisees, this very one that you are rejecting now will be the one that you will need. Later on Tuesday, Jesus is talking to his disciples and he begins to remind them that there will be several who will come to claim to be the Messiah, but they are not. And he reminds them that they will be led astray. And he reminds his disciples to be watchful, to be waiting for the true Messiah, for he will come and no one knows the hour. You see, the celebration throughout Jerusalem is diminishing. And it just kind of begs the question, as the Passion event unfolds, Jesus was taking a stand for righteousness. Will we, as believers, take a stand for righteousness? You see, Jesus took a stand at the temple, and Jesus took a stand in front of religious leaders, and he took a stand in front of the crowd. And that stand eventually cost him his life. So you, student, you, Christian, are you willing to take a stand in front of your friends, in front of your teammates? You see, Jesus stood for righteousness in the temple, and he stood for righteousness in front of those religious leaders, and he stood up in front of the crowds, and he stood for righteousness. As the Passion Week unfolds for your life, I want to challenge you to stand up for righteousness. There's going to come a time at your school, in your locker room, on the field, where you're going to have to stand up for what is right. See, Jesus, as he stood for righteousness, he realized it was going to cost him something, and it cost him his life. So my question for you, my challenge for you today, when the celebration around you begins to diminish, are you going to be willing to stand up even though it costs you something?